This is Therapy-ish.
Alrighty, guys, we are back with another episode of Therapy-ish, and today we're going to be talking to you guys about Black men's mental health and what they actually need. So today I have D, McKinnie, and he's going to introduce himself, tell you guys a little bit about where he's located, the population he serves, and just a little bit about himself, and then we'll jump into the episode. So
awesome. So my name, I go by D McKinney, but government name Alandi is D McKinney. So You might see that on all my paperwork. But my office is pretty much in Arlington, and right in the middle, right off of 20 and Green Oaks. And so at my practice, I serve pretty much the population of 16 all the way up, men, women, pretty much depression, anxiety, workplace issues, family therapy, those kind of things.
Okay. All right. So how long have you been doing psychotherapy, or officially? Because we do our internships.
Right. That's a great question. So honestly, I think this is going into my 9th year.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've been doing this for a while. Like it blows my mind to think about, like, every time I do my taxes, like, man, I've been doing this for a while. Like it literally feels like year 2 or 3 sometimes. Okay.
So what percentage of your client base is men?
So when I did the research, it's 3/4.
3/4, so about 75%. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm glad we're having this conversation. One of the things that comes up frequently for me is that we get a lot of clients that are specifically seeking heterosexual Black men in mental health. Mm-hmm. And so my friend was texting me, we was having a conversation, and she had mentioned that one of her friends reached out and had asked her, why are there not Black male therapists? And it kept going, and it got down to, do you guys even know what you need? Because even though they come and they go do therapy, a lot of times it's because my wife made me come, or my friend told me I should come to therapy, right. But they really don't know what it is that they need. Right. So with all of that, how can men identify what they need so they can zone in on what they actually need, so that they can find the best fit for them and actually hone in on the best therapist for them, even if they have to settle for a Black woman?
Right. So in the case where, like, I've had men come in and say, like, I don't know why I'm here, right? Or like you said, my wife told me I need to come in. I think one of my first questions typically would be is, so if your wife was here, what would she say you need to work on? Okay. Right. And in some cases, whether it's, I don't know, anger issues or opening up, those kind of things. But I wouldn't stop there. I would ask the follow-up question, well, what are your thoughts about that? Do you believe this is an issue? Has it caused problems for you? And really just trying to dig in a little bit more as far as, well, what's the real issue? Is it that her perception of what you should be is off, or that there are some things that maybe you want to work on because it's caused problems over time? Mm-hmm. And really just kind of doing the history of, well, when did this really become a problem? Was it just a problem in the marriage? Was it just a problem in the relationship? Or has this stuff been going on for a long time? It's just been masked by other things.
Yeah. Okay. Because I know for me, I do get clients, a lot of male clients, and they are specifically looking for, of course, Black, preferably male, but preferably heterosexual. And so I think they do their research and they figure out that it's more so saturated with the LGBTQ community. Maybe they don't feel comfortable, whatever the situation is. And so they're like, so I kind of settled for you. And I'm like, okay, do you feel safe being right. here? Like, right. Do you want to be here? Right. Like, and then it always goes back to, I don't know. And, that makes sense to be able to, like, backtrack and say, okay, so are these things that people are saying about you very, very true, right, or are they not? Okay, so what do you believe to be as the biggest struggle right now for Black men?
That's a loaded question. And that's the question that I when I saw that question, I was like, oh, I can go really broad, or I can go kind of just hone in on a couple of those things. And I think when I talk to a couple of people and just question, like, well, hey, what are your thoughts? Just to kind of get my thoughts going in the right direction. By the way, I work for Tarrant County Adult Probation, so I do a lot of substance abuse counseling there, and I also do some working on criminal thinking. And one of the things that I see with a lot of men, especially on what we call the criminal thinking side, is just the trust factor is gone. Okay. And a lot of that is because of maybe past traumas, I even look at, like, past examples of, I don't know, things that have gone wrong in a man's life or things that they've seen happen to their fathers or aunts and uncles or things like that. And it just leads to a lot of just, I don't ever want to open up. I have to do this by myself. And I think that becomes problematic because now you're trying to tackle the world, which is kind of stacked against you by yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes problematic for a lot of us. I will even say myself at times because I'm like, well, I can't ask no questions because then I'll look weak. Right. Mm-hmm. Or I can't get any help because people will say, well, man up, you got to do this by yourself, when we're meant to, you know, have a community. We're meant to have people who will look down and say, hey, you might want to try these things. You might want to, you know, do something a little bit different rather than maybe looking at the social media and letting that be your guide, letting that be your compass. So yeah, those are just some of the things that I was like, when I thought about that question, it's like there's a lot of things, but I think just the trust factor of being open to guidance from another source. And not to say that that person knows everything, but sometimes they know something I don't know. Mm-hmm. And being willing to just having an open heart and open mind to different ways of thinking, especially when it comes to what's important to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, trust is huge because it's like you said, there's childhood traumas, there are societal norms or beliefs about men, there are stigmas, there are relationship interactions that we have in our adulthood that don't go in our favor. And so a lot of those things pour into it. And it's just like you said, I was taught to do things by myself. But I always found it like men always have friends, most. Mm-hmm. They always have like a community of friends. Women, we usually have friends, and I think that our relationships are very intense. They're very intimate, and I don't know how deep it gets for you guys. You know, like I'm talking about everything under the sun. Mm-hmm. I even know what color eyes your grandmother got. Like, that's how much we talk.
Now, that's deep. Okay.
And I ain't never met your grandma. I know how many moles on her face.
Right.
And, you know, I don't know, like, how intimate do those, and I know this is an aside, right? Like, how intimate do those conversations get to where men feel like they can tell their friend, hey, bro, like, hey, you probably should go talk to somebody because I see that that's a concern and I'm not equipped to support you with it. You're not alone, but I don't know that I'm the best one to touch that.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's the hardest part, is finding a safe space.
Okay.
Right. And what I mean by safe space is an emotionally safe space. Mm-hmm. Because I think that's another tough spot for men, is that typically when at least even me growing up, if I was going to be emotional, I had to be in front of a woman because she would get it.
Okay.
But if in front of a man, no. Your man card is pulled real quick, like toughen up, throw some dirt on it, stop acting like you know what, and move on, right? But unfortunately, what that causes is that, okay, I shouldn't have these emotions, but I still have these emotions.
Right.
So something's wrong with me. When really nothing's wrong with you. You're a human, you're a man. You're supposed to have these emotions. When you're hurt, you're hurt. When you're lonely, right? And we got to learn how to deal with those things rather than just trying to cover it up and act like it's not here.
That's fair. So
that emotionally safe place would be a group of like-minded peers, like-minded men and women, whoever you feel comfortable with, but people who are going to be willing to keep you accountable. But also people who are sensitive enough to know, like, hey, if this person's being vulnerable, don't slap them, right? Don't make them feel like a bad person. And I think, unfortunately, as men, that's kind of what we typically do, is like, man up, like, stop all these tears or whatever it is. And I think that's almost ingrained in us from a childhood, like, big boys don't cry.
Yeah.
Right. How many times have you heard your niece, nephew, like, oh, clean up those tears, big boys don't cry. But a young lady, it's like, okay, we'll say the same thing, but we'll allow for a little bit longer.
I don't know that they say the same thing. I feel like people just go in for hugs. Oh, come
That's
here.
True. That's true.
Come here. And I'd be like, I don't want a hug.
Mm-hmm. True.
Okay, I guess, you know, you're right. Finding those safe spaces. I didn't realize that it wasn't that, like, because we can like lay across our best friend lap and cry. We can say, I need a movie night, come over, and we can just cry it out, cry a river all weekend long. Our friends will understand if we say, I need you to get in the car and I need you to get here.
Yeah.
No questions asked.
Yeah.
And there is no judgment. We'd be like, we want to say, I told you, but then we'd be like, okay.
Right.
And then once you're in a safe space, we'd be like, okay, did we not have this conversation? Mm-hmm. Did we not see the flags? Mm-hmm. Did we not tell you? Or whatever the situation is, right? But I always feel like other men can understand other men issues, especially because like I used to have like really short hair and I used to be in the barbershop. And of course, that wasn't my safe space. I was invading other people's space.
Gotcha.
But my barber was in a male barbershop, so I
Right.
had to get my hair cut. And when the men would come in and like talk about their issues with either their lady, feeling like they have to take care of their mother, their sister, their younger siblings, whatever the conversation is, like I feel like the men in the room understood that. Like, don't get me wrong, like we have our struggles or whatever, but I feel like I got to see other men saying, yeah, you know, this helped me. This is what you should do. And I've even seen men like break down in the barbershop, and it was cool, but it was a safe space because it was the barbershop.
Right.
So.
But to your point though, like that's a great place if you have that. Right. But if you don't go to barbershops like myself, where do you go?
Therapy.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And that's the whole other barrier is, especially in the Black community, like I think now it's becoming a lot more accepted. But again, I'm going back to, and I can only speak on my upbringing, but I was always told like what happens in this house stays in this house. Right. And that's still a thing, unfortunately. It's like an unspoken rule. You don't talk about inside issues outside. But
that's crazy to me because grandma know everything.
Yep.
How do grandma know I busted my nose running outside?
Because somebody talking.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's like if what happens in this house, it's because it's your business. We can't talk about it.
That's correct.
If it makes you look bad. But you can talk about us.
Correct.
No matter how bad we look in hindsight of that. But I'll digress. Okay. So right now, this is probably gonna be a very controversial question, right? Right now we're in this space where it is men against women. Everywhere. Everywhere. Like on social media, in friend groups, in generational dialogue. Right. It's men against women.
Right.
So how do we move past that in the Black community? Of course, a lot of it is rooted in trauma, but I'm seeing so many lonely Black men in my office, so many lonely Black women in the office, and we're all still afraid to take the leap of faith.
Right. I think that's another hard one, because I think you mentioned the social media thing. I think that's one of the hardest things because you're inundated with relationship failure. Right, where people are quick to put things online about this is why you can't trust so and so. This is why you can't trust these people. And you see that and you hear that and you start realizing like, okay, and you have a couple bad experiences yourself. Like, oh, this is everywhere, right? And therefore, self-preservation kicks in. All the defense mechanisms kick in and say, well, I'm not trying that stuff anymore, right? Although, like you talked about, I'm lonely. I want a connection. I want to have that connection. Because we're social creatures. We're supposed to have, people around us and those kind of things. So I think that's one of the biggest things is what do you feed yourself? Because if you are looking at social media all day, every day, and that's where you're getting your information, that's your diet.
That's fair. Yesterday I saw, it was Elon Musk and a couple of other tech startup companies that was like, we got to stop AI.
Yes, I saw that pop on my phone this morning.
They were like, we have to stop AI. We are in a place of doom. We saw it.
Right.
We saw it the moment COVID hit. We saw it before COVID hit when we were receiving like the digital menus. Scan the QR code. And it's just like, how do I ever learn to speak up for myself if I don't have a space to do it?
Right.
Ordering food and telling you it's wrong, that's me learning how to speak up for myself. Holding a conversation with the waiter or the waitress is a way for me to, communicate with someone new,
right.
which are skills that I don't have or I'm not building. So when we talk about like being lonely, I think the biggest thing that I see is like you said, what are you feeding yourself? But also, how do you treat yourself when you are alone? Because so many men come in and they're like, I suck at dating. I don't know what I'm doing. I sabotage everything, which some of those statements may be true, right?
Right.
But it's just like, but how do you treat yourself when you're alone? Do you treat yourself like a loser? Do you treat yourself like you have, or do you work towards building social skills?
Yeah.
Are you getting some coaching? Do you have a person that does your clothing, like a stylist? Do you have the things that you need to build and boost your confidence so that you do feel comfortable making those leaps and bounds? Because I think confidence plays
a big part of it.
the first role, right? If I'm not confident, I'm not approaching anything.
Right.
And then once you get there, well, of course, I feel like therapy and confidence comes together because you can't have healthy confidence, I think, without interpersonal growth and belief, like positive self-belief. What you're feeding yourself, but like also how are you treating yourself by yourself as a Black man? Because if you know how it is, like for Black women, they be like, oh, you 30 plus, you ain't got no kids, you're not married, something must be wrong with you. What you be doing? And it's just like, no, like there are some things that I'm just not signing myself up for because I know I don't have the capacity for it. But with Black men, you're taught to, I don't know what you taught in regard to that. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So I think, I don't know, I guess, like you said, or like I mentioned, going back to what are you feeding yourself? What's been your experience up until now? Right. And that emotional fatigue that we feel when it comes to just the dating game. And even like, I think about now, like what dating is like and what the rules are now, what the expectations are now.
It's ghetto.
It's changing. Right. And a man jumping into that, if they're like, again, old school versus new school kind of thing. Right. Like 50-50 versus no, you do this, do that. And that's fine. You believe what you believe and you stand up for what you want. But I think that's also discouraging to a lot of people as well, because at the end of the day, like I have to figure out what do I stand for. Right. And that's that confidence thing. Right. And can I understand that it's a trial and error game when it comes to dating? Right. I had a pastor say a while ago that, it was trial and like dating is trial and error. You're going to fail sometimes. You expect it. You're going to find some losers. You're going to find some cornballs, all these other things. But if your desire to have that connection and have that mate is great enough, then you will find that person. But you're going to have to filter through some muck. Yeah. Right. And that's why when you find that person, you hold on to that person. And I agree. It's hard because, again, if we don't know how to date, if we don't know how to be vulnerable, if we don't know how to be open, it's hard to do those things. But those are things that I try to talk about with some of my male clients who in those areas they struggle. Like, I don't know how to talk. Like literally, that's some of the conversations we have is I don't know what to say. And in my brain, I'm like, just say anything. But I realize that even that is so anxiety provoking.
Absolutely.
Because they don't want to say the wrong thing. And I even think back to my dating journey before I got to my wife. I was in those exact same shoes because I wanted to present myself a certain kind of way.
Right.
And my nerves just kicked in and I said something crazy and off the wall. And I'm like, oh, there goes that date.
And that is the thought process. Literally, that is the thought process. I always say, like, practice dating. That is my favorite word to use.
Yeah.
Practice dating. Like you said, nobody's perfect. Everything's not going to be great.
Yeah.
Even if you don't necessarily like this person, be honest.
Right.
But ask the difficult questions that you need to ask so that when you meet that person, you know how to have dialogue without it being conflict, even if you don't get the answer you want.
Correct. I had a client who did something that I thought was profound. It was actually a teenage client who he said, I'm going to fail at least once a day. I'm going to purposely fail at communicating once a day because his thing was, again, being afraid to communicate. So he was just simply saying, I'm just going to initiate conversation. I know it's going to go wrong, but I'm going to just do it. So it's almost like stress inoculation. So it just becomes normal. I won't say normal in the sense that like, it's okay, but in the sense that I'm okay with it. Absolutely. Like if things don't go well, that I can still live. There's still life after this and that I can still be okay.
Yeah.
And I came up with that all by himself and he did. And he was surprised. He was like, oh, these conversations went a lot better than what I thought they would be because I was afraid that people would just not say hello or people would not engage in conversation with me. And I thought that was profound because it's like, again, you challenge yourself.
Absolutely.
And in that challenge, you found that the world is not as scary as you thought it was.
Yeah. And I be trying to tell people that. It's my male clients. They be like, yeah, they're out of my league. And I'm like, what is her league? How do you know that you are not her league? She might be into men that don't have the flyest things on. You don't know what she into.
Right.
But you haven't had a conversation or attempted a conversation to figure it out.
And that's a good point. Like, I think, unfortunately, we all like put things and people in boxes.
Absolutely.
Right. That's how we learn and that's how we approach what's safe and what's not safe. Right. And like you talked about, like the league thing is just like, okay, I bet, okay, she's this type of person. So I bet she wants this, this, and this. I'm going to put her in that box. Am I any of those things? Right. I kind of got this one, but all these other things, no, I don't have that. So I'm going to just leave that alone. But like you said, it keeps us safe, but it also can keep us lonely as well.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think, like we said, to get out of this men versus women are doing this wrong, men are doing that wrong, is to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay if this person doesn't follow your values and beliefs. Like you said,
Right.
what do I stand on?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it doesn't matter how they receive me as long as I know that I'm convicted in what I want and what I believe in for myself.
Right.
And I think the biggest part is, what do you believe? And if you don't know what you believe in, you gotta start resourcing and figuring out what that is. And a lot of times, these are conversations we're not having. So I know in my friend group, I'd be like, we recently had a conversation, like, give me 3 qualities that I have that you see of me. And each one of us gave something different. And so we were able to talk through our traumas through that conversation, right? So I think one of my friends listed, like, you're loyal and you're strong. And I was like,
Yep.
absolutely not. And so I think that goes back to the conversation where I was saying, like, we have very intimate conversations with our friend groups and we talk about everything. And so I think that men just gotta, and again, there's not men against women, but based on what you said, like, I think we just gotta find a space to just accept people for who they are and what they are. That will help us get past, like, the men versus women. Like, let's talk about it.
Correct.
I agree. I disagree. I'ma still love you through it.
Mm-hmm.
But you just not my cup of tea, and that's
Right.
okay. And I can still respect and love you in the same space.
Yeah.
So, okay. So, what are your thoughts on weak and vulnerable being in the same sentence? Because I think that a lot of times we put weakness and vulnerable in the same sentence.
I think it takes a extremely strong person to be vulnerable.
Okay.
Because they're taking the greatest risk.
This is fair.
Right. And simply put, if I'm out there and if I'm genuine with somebody, there's a potential that it's not going to be liked. It's not going to be well received.
Mm-hmm.
But if I just know that I'm okay with just who I am and the things that I stand for, and I don't necessarily set myself up to live or thrive off of other people's opinions or that I'm a good person in their eyes or I'm a bad person in their eyes, I just know who I am. I think that goes a long way, and that takes a level of confidence to be able to do that. So I don't think they belong in the same sentence.
Okay. They always go in the same sentence, oddly enough, though.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm with you. I don't believe they should go in the same sentence. Okay. So what are ways in which men can set boundaries and express emotion without feeling weak or as if their man card is revoked?
Yeah.
So many men live for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Some would argue otherwise, but many have been placed in a father role or a spouse role in a family at a young age and feel like they have to save their mom, their sister, their nieces, but they haven't really identified self-love and boundaries within their capacity. So, how can they set boundaries and still express emotions without feeling weak?
I think that goes back to knowing yourself and know what you want. And I guess when I think about that question, I'm assuming that's like in the context of like, well, not necessarily that have to be within family, right? Whether it's immediate family, whether it's extended family, or even boundaries with other people.
Absolutely.
I guess that matters as well. So it really just goes back to who are you, right? And what do you stand for? And in some cases, at some point in time in your life, asking yourself, why do you stand for these things? Because there are things, again, that we can get handed down, right? And we don't know why we believe these things. We just know that, oh, this is what a man is. But maybe that was for that time. Can that be redefined, or can that be something different? And once you can start answering those questions, you can start saying, this is what I stand for, this is what I don't stand for. Yes. And as far as the man card thing, that's hard because, again, we all want to be accepted, right? And at the end of the day, like, knowing that rejection is a hard, sucky thing to deal with.
Yeah.
Right. And especially if it's coming from a source that we really want to be accepted by. But that confidence, like we talked about before, and just knowing that, okay, if this group of people doesn't accept me for who I am and what I am, then I don't need to be around this anyway, because they're going to just drain that energy from me.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to be forced to change it to something that I'm not happy with. Right. And granted, there are some situations where I might be around some people and they may tell me, like, bro, you're tripping. Right. And I may not like that. But do some serious self-reflection and be able to figure out, like, am I really tripping? And sometimes I am. And sometimes I need that accountability, right? Other times I have to be willing to say, maybe check with my support system. Hey, is this something that you think I need to be changing or working on? Those kind of things. But going back to your question, how do you set boundaries? You got to say something. I think that's sometimes one of the hardest things is that it's okay for you to know your limit, know your line, and stay there and stand on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I think if you can do that, you can find yourself in a lot less risky situations. And whether that's risky, like physically, or risky emotionally, risky to relationships, know where your lines are and stand on those lines.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That is very true. Very true. Favorite line is, once you draw a line, you got to stand on it. It's just like soccer.
Mm-hmm.
If you get off from in front of that goal or off that line that you have for yourself to keep that ball from going in, people are going to try it.
Right.
With you standing on it, they're going to try it, right? So draw the line and stand on it.
Right.
Because if you leave it unguarded, people are going to try the line. They're going to cross it like any other thing in your life. So,
and can I add one thing to that? I'll also say this, that if you are finding yourself surrounded with people who are continuously crossing your boundaries
or taking,
right, you really need to start considering, like, who are these people thinking about when they do that? Like, if let's
absolutely
say, right, because at the end of the day, they really don't have your best interest at heart. If they continuously, this is your line, I'm gonna keep pushing you. They're not looking out for you. They're looking out for themselves.
Especially because I know you're gonna do it.
Mm-hmm.
I know you're gonna do it.
That's exactly right. So again, you have to really kind of start evaluating your relationships. And if you need to start pulling yourself away because you keep having these resentments built because people are pushing you outside of your limits, you got to realize, number one, I'm choosing to step outside my limits for these people, whether it's because of love, whether it's because of loyalty, or like you said, that sense of I have to take care, right? But on the other side of that, I have to be willing to look at, okay, if these people love me, if they care about me, they will allow me to have that boundary, even if they have to sacrifice not getting something.
Oh, absolutely. Well, it's not a sacrifice that you're not getting something, but that's how people look at it. Like, I'm being selfish, so therefore, since you can't or won't do it, I have to be, I'm sacrificing. You were selfish. You didn't think about anybody else but yourself. But it's not. It's like, how can I be the best version for you if I keep pouring? I can't.
Right.
You're not going to get the friend you want if you keep calling me, asking me for money. If you keep calling me to come be your saving grace because you keep putting yourself in certain situations. If you keep making poor decisions and you think I'm not going to hold you accountable, like, I have to say no, because you're not going to get the best version of me like that.
Right.
And that's the perfect language right there. No, because I have to ask myself, am I going to be the same friend to you after I keep giving? Because I'm going to build some sort of resentment.
Correct.
And then this friendship ain't going to work because I'm going to start saying no, and I'm going to start giving you resentful responses. And you may either become angry or jealous. One of two.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay. Do men really know what it means to self-love?
Great question. Another one of those ones that I have to ask a couple people. I think for that one, I'll say initially no.
Okay.
I think self-love can grow over time as you grow up and as you get experiences.
Okay.
Right. And you start learning in different ways, what it means and what it is to have love. Right. Because I think we know, like, we're taught from an early age what it means to love someone else or something else.
Right.
Right. But your question is, do we know what self-love is? I would say not necessarily.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because think about just mental health in general. Like, the way we are taught to deal with mental health is it doesn't exist, number one, right? Like, that's just you being weak. Or I hear a lot of my clients, the term that they're throwing around is weak-minded. And I'm going to be honest, I hate that term. Hate it with a passion.
I guess because I'm not in Dallas anymore. I've never heard that one.
So weak-minded is, I don't know, and I guess it's just one of those things where, like, you need to be strong all the time. And I'm like, that's impossible.
Yeah, it's definitely impossible.
It's physically impossible to be strong every single time, 24/7. I think that is one of the things that we try to rely on our strength, we're going to fall, right? But if you have, again, going back to what we talked about before, a great support system, people who can kind of tell you about yourself, right? And you actually trust their opinion, that keeps you going in the right direction when I start veering off and just trusting myself too much. Because I always think, like, and maybe I'm going off on a tangent, but if I'm stuck in my own head all day, every day, I'm going to start believing in my own crazy.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. My crazy is what's going to make the most sense. And then when I start saying those things out loud, people can start checking that crazy. Right. And that's why I think we need that support system to remind us that, okay, I'm veering off. Let me get back on track.
Yeah. Okay. I guess the reason I asked that is like, right now Black women are just everywhere loving themselves and like doing the things. And I just be like, Do men know what self-love is? Because
Yeah.
I feel like we got it to a T, but how can we support you guys in identifying what that is? And the biggest thing is having a conversation about what that could look like for
Right.
you. And self-love includes self-care. And a lot of times when I ask men about self-care, they be like, I go play basketball. And I'm like, okay.
Yep. Basketball in the gym. Those are the biggest ones. Yes.
You can go get a massage. You can
Right.
go get a facial.
Right.
You can go have a drink on some patio at a nice 5-star restaurant like anybody else.
Yeah. Or it could be just something as simple as I'm taking time for me and I'm just going to read this book.
Absolutely.
I'm going to learn about something about myself, right? Doing some type of self-reflection, right? I mean, because I think when you talk about sitting on a patio, taking a drink, those kind of things, I think some men be like, oh, okay, that's cool. Other men be like, oh, that sounds soft.
That's fair.
Right.
That's fair.
So,
that is fair.
and so I think with that, it's how you, self-love just looks at how you rebuild you. Because if you put so much of yourself out there in the world, right, how are you restoring that? How are you putting yourself back in a place where you are not only physically okay, obviously the gym and basketball, mentally okay, spiritually okay, emotionally okay.
Yeah.
Right. And I think if we can balance all of those things, then we're in a better place.
I like to slap the word growth across that. Self-love, growth.
Right.
Okay. Last question. What would you tell your younger self or young men who are coming up who don't have access to a mentor or a man of guidance to help them take on the reins of maintaining adequate mental health?
When you asked that question, this reminded me of like why I went into counseling. Because I think for me, I always have been the type of person where people would come to and ask like, what should I do? I always come to for guidance and those kind of things. And at some point in time, I guess it was a good thing because I was helping people. I was seeing that information was helping people. But when I was by myself, I felt like I had nobody to talk to. I felt like, well, everybody thinks I got it together, so I got to hold it together, right? And that became detrimental over time because I won't say breaking down, but my self-esteem was shot, right? Like outwardly, it's there, it's fine, it's intact, but inside it's just like, I don't know what to do with this stuff. But as I got older, I started realizing that if I opened up my mouth more, there would have been a lot more people who'd be willing to help me, right? And I think so. I look at it from this point of view that there's help out there, but it just may not come from the source that you wanted.
Okay.
Right. It may not be like the actual biological father that I want.
Okay.
But there might be, some people believe in spiritual fathers. It might be, that community leader. It might be just that one dude who goes to work 9 to 5 and that's his life. Right. But I think it can come from different sources. We just have to be willing to be open to those sources.
Okay. Well, thank you for taking time out to talk to me today. Now, I will say I did use like a lot of women-related examples,
right?
But I did that because we don't know. We know what it looks like for us. So when I ask the question, it's more so like, this is what it looks like for me, and this is what I have to kind of go off of.
Yeah.
So when I'm having a conversation with someone about men's-related issues, I kind of got to connect it to me so that I can be able to bring it out. You know what I mean?
Makes
so
sense.
that I can actually identify, hey, this is how I can help you. Somebody told me I can help you this way. And this is what it's kind of equivalent to for me or us, right? So I just want you to know that I wasn't trying to take the mic.
No worries.
This is for y'all. But I wanted you to know, even the people listening, like, oh, she talk a lot about women. That's not where I wanted to go with that. I just wanted to make sure that everybody who are women who are trying to find ways to help men understand the lens of some of those questions.
Right. So. And I think that's a great point of view, but I also would say that hopefully this helps another man reach out to another man as well.
Absolutely.
Because I know you're saying, how can we as women help men? And I think that's one category of it, but I also think men need to help men.
Absolutely.
And I think that's maybe going back to your question, what's one of the issues that Black men face is, how can another man help another man, right? And actually be open to knowing that person, who they are, not condemning, coming from a place of just, I just want to help. I just want to be able to understand what you're going through and love you through it.
Yeah. And of course, these conversations can definitely go deeper because a lot of what we're taught and what our issues are rooted in stems all the way back to slavery, stems all the way back to being pulled from our native lands, native languages, native dialect, all the things. And so all of that, house slave versus field slave, all of that impacts why we're not vulnerable, because in other Black communities that are not U.S. based cultures, I guess, like Africa, Jamaica, different places like that, it's very different. It's very different. I'd be like, this is what's going on over here? And it's because they have the community.
Yeah.
And there's no wrong thing to say to the next man unless it's, of course, disrespectful.
Right.
So, and they hold each other accountable in their communities.
That's awesome.
Not that we don't. Just saying. So.
It's just different.
It's different.
Yeah.
It's definitely different.
I give you that.
It's definitely different. Okay. Well, again, this is D. McKinnie, and he is here in Arlington, Texas, off of 20 and Green Oaks. So if you are looking for another, I think he full, but you know, it's never anything wrong with getting on the wait list if he is someone you hope to connect with, and he sees clients in person. So if you're looking for in person and you're in the Arlington, Fort Worth, kind of Grand Prairie-ish area, great opportunity. So thanks for joining.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right.